and welcome to my January wrap-up. I read 15 books this month, I believe. We'll have to count at the end. And I guess I'll get started on the list.
This month I read a total of 14 books, which amounted to 5,206 pages, with an average page count of 371 pages per book. I don't count comics or manga towards the page count totals or the total number of books, but I do include it in my format chart. So 6% of the books I read this month were Kindle, 29% were audiobooks, 47% were physical books, and 18% were comic or manga. As for where I sourced the books, 7% were borrowed, 7% were a reread, 7% were hauled this year, 14% was from the library, and 65% were from my owned TBR at the start of 2023. Last statistic is genres. I read 14% contemporary romance, 22% of the books were thrillers or mystery, 14% were fantasy romance, and unsurprisingly 50% was fantasy.
So first book I read this month was A Master of Djinn by P. Djeli Clark, and I loved this book. It was so good. So this is set in early 1900s Cairo. We follow our main detective, Fatma, I believe her name is. Yep, Fatma. And she is basically works for a bureau that investigates magical crimes. So in this world, Djinn have come back. They are real and they are integrated into society as normal members. So her government task force is tasked with investigating crimes that have to do with magic. In this case, she is investigating the death of 13 members of a secret society who were burned by magic, burned to death by magic. It's great. It is a fun adventure story. I really like our main character. The mystery wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be, but the character work and the world made up for it. So yeah, I haven't even seen if they're gonna write a second book, but I really hope they do because I really enjoyed this world. Next book I read is a novella called Spindle Splintered by Alix E. Harrow. In this we follow a terminally ill girl who basically has this disease that no one lives past the age of 21. They all die before they turn 22. So it is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. So like Sleeping Beauty can't live past the age of 16 when she pricks her finger, our character can't live past the age of 21 because of her disease. It is a multiverse book. It is fun. With all novellas, I need to stop reading them because I always wish there was more. But I really liked the different elements of the different Sleeping Beauty tales they brought in. I liked our main character. I liked what we got out of her relationship with both her parents, her best friend, the other characters in the story. I thought it was really well done for being so short. I just wish that there was a little bit more. Next book I read was Daughter of the Siren Queen. This is the second book to a duology. In the first book, we follow our main character, who is a young pirate girl. She is the daughter of the Pirate King. She is kidnapped at the beginning of the book and to be held for ransom. But then we find out, it turns out she's on the ship of her own volition. She got kidnapped on purpose because she needs to find pieces of a map. There are 3 pieces, and her father has one. There's another one that we don't know where it is, and then the third one is on this ship. So we kind of see her interacting with that crew, getting to know them, that type of deal. We learn about her character and certain secrets she has. So yeah, second book, I really like how it wrapped up. I really like how they took care of the villain. It was definitely younger YA, and I liked it. I think I would have liked it a lot better if I was like a teenager, because some of the angst got to be a little much sometimes. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I thought it was cute. I thought the pirate elements were really fun. This one did have Siren elements, which was pretty fun too. I liked seeing that part of it. I do wish the end destination we explored a little more. I feel like we spent a lot of time getting to the end destination, but once we were there, we didn't really explore it as much as I would have liked to. But yeah, overall, it was cute. I liked it. I'm glad I read it. Next book on the list is Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is the first of the secret projects for Brandon Sanderson. In this world, we follow our young protagonist, Tress. She lives on an island. It is a dreary island. No one's allowed to leave. It's not that great quality of life, but they need it as a stopover for like resupplying on ships. So you cannot ever leave. Like, no one is allowed to leave the island except for the nobility. Tress doesn't mind this though. She's happy with her life. She's a window washer. She likes to bake and cook and help support her family. And she has a love interest, Charlie, who is the son of the Duke. And then one day, Charlie's father decides it's time for him to get married. As nobility, it's his job. So they take him off the island to try and find him a wife. Charlie does everything in his power to deter every woman because he loves Tress as well. And so finally his father gets fed up and he unfortunately gets kidnapped by a evil sorceress and is held for ransom. And the father says it's not worth it, adopts a different son, and basically no one's going to rescue Charlie. So Tress takes it upon herself, even though she's happy with her life, never wanted to leave the island, to try to escape the island and save Charlie. As with all Brandon Sanderson books, the world in this, the magic system was absolutely wonderfully done. I loved it. In this world, you are, I said ships, you're not sailing on water, you are sailing on tiny little spores. And these spores, depending on what sea they're from, there are several different seas, will react differently when water is added. So that was really cool to see. There is some Cosmere elements, which was really fun. There's one character he's in all the Cosmere books, and he played a very large role in this, though it's a different role than he usually does, so that was kind of interesting. And the writing style, I would say, is very different than Brandon Sanderson. This was more of a storytelling voice than it was normal Brandon Sanderson, and while it's still super accessible like all of his books are, definitely took me a little bit to get into the storytelling format of it. But yeah, I loved it. It was amazing. I'm so excited for all the other secret projects. Next book I read is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I enjoyed this book. I didn't love it. We follow a young girl. I cannot remember her name right now. She is a young lady in the 1800s. She is of noble birth, so she is meant to be finding a husband, to be going to fancy parties, to be wearing nice dresses, but instead she likes to apprentice as a mortician with her uncle, who is one of the city's most renowned morticians. So she and her uncle's student are tasked with basically investigating the Jack the Ripper murders. So this is a fantasy romance. There are heavy fantasy elements, and that is how the book is presented, like on the little blurb and stuff. But I would definitely say this is much more of a murder mystery. It was a basic story. I didn't love any of the characters. I wasn't really interested in the love story. I did like the Jack the Ripper elements. I thought those were really cool. You can tell she did research, including certain specifics like letters that the original Jack the Ripper wrote and stuff like that, incorporating into their story. And there are pictures in here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find any. Now that I said it, I'm not going to be. But like pictures of like that letter I mentioned, like the actual, oh, here it goes. Like the actual Jack the Ripper letter and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun reading it. I will probably continue on because I have the second book, but I was just expecting more. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting more. But yeah, it was good. It wasn't great. Yeah. Next book was a reread for me. It was The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I loved this book this time around. So The Eye of the World is the first book in a 15-book epic fantasy series. We start off following a small town called Emmons Field. We follow specifically 3 young boys, and they are all preparing for a festival, and during that festival, creatures called Trollocs attack. So they are whisked away by a magic wielder and her like bodyguard basically. So those, and they are taken because basically the Dark One, the bad guy in this series, is looking for boys around their age because they are looking for someone called the Dragon Reborn, who is a person that is reborn again and again to fight the Dark One. And the Shadow and we don't know who the Dragon Reborn is, but we are pretty sure it's one of these three boys. There are a couple of other Edmund Fielders that come with them for various reasons. But oh my gosh, I loved this on reread. So I finished the Wheel Time series, the entirety, except for the New Spring novella that I didn't know about when I read it the first time, probably 10 years ago. And just rereading this, knowing where all these characters end up, and just seeing them as little babies and being back in this world. Oh my God, I loved it. It was so good. Again, that intro, it doesn't even cover a, fourth of this book, let alone the rest of it. It's kind of a hard series to describe. But I love it. I love these characters. I'm so excited to be back in this world. So yeah, hopefully I'll start the Great Hunt soon. And yeah, this was probably my favorite read of the month. But yeah. Okay, next book is Blackmail and Babinka by Mia P. Manansala. This is a set of cozy murder mysteries. So this is the third book in the series. We follow our main character, Lila, who has recently moved back home in with her family, who owns a Filipino restaurant. She was basically found out her fiance was cheating on her, broke up with him, lost her job. I believe it was her business went under. She had a small business, so she basically has to move in at home and start over. In the first book, her ex-boyfriend from high school is poisoned in her aunt's restaurant, so she basically has to investigate to clear her aunt's restaurant and her name. Obviously by the third book a lot of things have developed, but I love this cozy murder mystery series. I think it's so cute. The food descriptions in here are absolutely excellent. Like I said, her family owns a Filipino restaurant. I believe it's Filipino. I should probably check on that. And another of the characters owns a coffee shop and works at a coffee shop, so you get those kind of descriptions, pastries, stuff like that. It's a very diverse cast. I love all of the characters. The mysteries are fun to figure out. So yeah, I loved these books. I can't wait till the next one comes out. Next book I read is Desperate Measures. I'll put a picture here because I already returned the physical copy to my friend. Desperate Measures by Katee Roberts. So this is a fantasy romance. It is set in a world where we're basically contained in one city, and in this city there are different territory bosses, and each territory boss is a Disney villain. So this is obviously a retelling of a bunch of Disney stories. In this one we follow Jafar and Jasmine. So Jafar has just basically made a power move to take over the territory from Jasmine's father, and is claiming Jasmine as a prize type deal. These are very, very smutty. I would say most of the fantasy romance I've read is probably 80% plot, 20% smut, and this one was probably 80% smut and 20% plot. And while it was kind of fun to see all of the Disney characters in there, because at one point you go to Haiti has a sex club, and in that club it's kind of where everyone meets central. So you see Meg, you see Hook, I think, is in there, you see Tink. There's it's kind of fun to see all that, and I did like how they handled the ending of the story. I don't think I'm gonna continue with the series because yeah, I just think it's too much smut for me. I'm not really a smut reader. I prefer stories over smut. But yeah, I'm glad I read it because I've been seeing it everywhere. And again, my friend was like, you should try it, just see if you like it. And she had it for free. So it was good to try. I probably won't be continuing with the series. But yeah. Next book is The Queen's Poisoner by Jeff Wheeler. It is the first book in the King Fountain series. It follows a young boy named Owen, whose parents basically committed treason, And so they are a duke and duchess, I believe, and as payment, the king demands they give up one of their children as a ward, which is really just a fancy way of saying prisoner to make sure you stay in line. So they end up giving up their youngest son, Owen, and he goes and lives in the castle. And we follow kind of his adventures in the castle. He meets up with a mysterious woman who seems to be hiding from the king at night, is a poisoner, that kind of a thing. I liked this book. I didn't love it. I think part of the problem is I don't like child characters if they are the main character. So I'm not cool with like side characters like Lift from Stormlight, stuff like that. But when the main character is a child, I don't tend to like the story as much. It also felt very, very similar to Assassin's Apprentice. You know, young boy goes and lives at a keep where he doesn't know anyone, mysterious stranger who knows poisons, takes him under their wing, that kind of a thing. It felt very, very Assassin's Apprentice to me, and I didn't like Assassin's Apprentice either. The magic was pretty cool in this book, and I think we'll get to explore that further down, which could be interesting. But yeah, overall, I wasn't impressed. There was nothing bad about it. It just wasn't amazing, and I don't think it was for me. But yeah, but that cover, I love this cover. I think it's so pretty. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know if it's the clouds or like this outside part, but I do love this cover. I will say that. But yeah. Next book on the list is Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. So this is a murder mystery thriller. We follow 4 women assassins. They have been assassins their whole life. They are now 60 years old. They are getting ready to retire. They're going on their retirement cruise when on that cruise someone tries to kill them. And so it is basically us following these 4 old ladies trying to figure out why there is a hit out on them, who is trying to kill them, what is going on, that kind of a thing. And there's also flashbacks in the books to when they were first becoming assassins, and it was kind of interesting the way the story was written because you would get a scene from the past with, you know, a person they knew back then or something they learned how to do or something like that, and then you would get a scene in the present where that scene directly applies to something we just saw in the past. So it was kind of fun to see the back and forth there. I really liked it. It was cute. It took me probably about halfway through to get into it. In the beginning, I had kind of a problem telling all the old ladies apart. But I really liked the ending. I thought it was cute. I liked that the old ladies kicked ass, even though they were like in their 60s. And it didn't just have them kick ass. It had them, you know, in shape and knowing what they're doing, but still being 60 years old. So I thought that was really fun. I really liked it. It was cute. It was standalone. I liked Deanna Raybourn's other series, the Veronica Speedwell. So when I found out she was coming out with like an old lady assassin story, I had to read it. So I'm glad I did. It was good. I really liked it. Next book is Love on the Brain by Hazelwood. This is a contemporary romance, sorry. We follow our main character, B. Yeah, her name is B, and she is a neuroscience PhD graduate. A doctor of neuroscience. That's what I'm looking for. And she is hired for her dream job at NASA to work on a brain stimulating helmet for astronauts. And it's her dream job. She's getting everything she wanted. The only problem is she has to co-run this project with her nemesis from PhD, Levi, who basically they hated each other all through college, and now she's gonna have to work with him. And it is an enemies to lovers. There is, yeah, that's just basically it. I love these books. I love Hazelwood's writing as a woman in STEM myself. I love the elements she adds with the science. It doesn't go too deep. I'm not even sure if it would be real science if you looked into it. I would guess it at least borders on real science. But I love just, you can tell, I think she is at least gone to school for something for STEM, but you can tell she's been a woman in a STEM field. Just the way certain things are presented are very accurate. But yeah, I love this book. I think it's so cute. It gave me all of the feels. Ugh, yeah. It's probably between this and Iron World as my top books of the month. But yeah, I thought it was cute. I know people complain it's like her other book, Love Hypothesis, and that the two main characters are pretty derivative, or the two main love interests are pretty derivative of each other. But I would not say that, other than they're being tall, dark, and handsome and like weirdly secretly fit. I don't think that they're that similar or that the stories are that similar. I loved both of them. I think I loved Love Hypothesis slightly better, but this was really good too. It really, it was great. Next one is The Maid by Nita Prose. So this is another murder mystery. So in this book, we are following our main character, Molly, who is a maid at a fancy hotel. She is cleaning one day and happens upon one of the guests dead. So she is kind of swept up in the story because she is friends with the murdered man's wife, and also she's the one who found the body. So it's kind of her investigating, her getting swept up, eventually getting accused, all this other stuff. So we basically follow through the story. She is definitely neurodivergent, so she has problems picking up on social cues or understanding certain social interactions, which does get her into trouble in this investigation. Yeah, it was a very basic murder mystery, but I really did like our main character. I liked her interactions with people. It was one of those things where, like, because she's neurodivergent, she doesn't necessarily understand certain things that's going on, but us as the reader, we were like, don't trust him. Like, we can tell he's using you, but she has no idea. You know what I mean? That kind of a thing. But then there was a twist at the end. I loved the twist at the end. I thought it was so... Okay, twist is probably a strong word, but, like, the way the author ended it, I really liked, because it totally caught me off guard. I totally didn't expect it. I underestimated our main character, just like everyone in this book underestimates the main character. So yeah, I thought it was really fun. I really liked it. It's probably not like, you know, best book of all time, but I'm really glad I read it, and I really enjoyed the kind of like locked door mystery of it. So yeah. Next book is Bad Girl Reputation by Elle Kennedy. So this is another contemporary romance. We follow our main character, Jen, who is just returned home for her mother's funeral. She left town about a year ago. Before that, she was kind of a crazy party girl, you know, got into a bunch of trouble, both the law and just in life in general. And so she basically left a year ago to get her life together. But she comes back, and her father asks her to stick around to help out with the family business because her mom ran a lot of the office stuff and stuff like that. So she agrees to stay and help out. And while back in town, she runs into her ex-boyfriend. And it's kind of their story of her trying to balance her new well-adjusted self. Can she be with him? Is he, you know what I mean, bad for her? Is she bad for him? That kind of a thing. So it's second chance romance. I liked this one. I didn't love it. I did like the character growth over it. I liked how both people changed and adapted without losing themselves. I thought that was really good. I didn't love the two people together. I mean, I didn't like dislike them. I didn't have other characters I wanted them to be with, but I just like wasn't all that attached to their story. So yeah, I liked it. I'm glad I read it, but I don't think that this type of relationship is what I'm looking for in books. I don't know if it was that it was a second chance romance. I haven't read a lot of those. Maybe it was that. Yeah, or maybe I don't know. It just wasn't excellent, but it wasn't bad either. Like, I'm not upset I read it or anything. So yeah. So last book I read is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi. I loved this book. So this is a YA fantasy. We are set in an alternate world where there were once people called Magi. They basically had a bunch of different types of powers. There was wind, fire, water powers. There was also necromancy, or people who helped the spirits of the dead. There were healers. There were people who could commune with animals, that kind of a thing. And then one day, probably 15 years ago, I believe, all magic disappeared. No one knows why. And when that happened, the king... I don't remember if he was the king at the time, but the king in this book basically gathered up all of the magi, all of the adult magi, and slaughtered them all. And he left the children alive, but the children are now growing up and they are treated as second-class citizens in this world. So we follow our main character, Djeli, who is a child of a magi. So if magic was still here, she would be a magi this year. They're called diviners before they are turned into magi. And one day she is going to the market to sell a fish, and she runs into the runaway princess. The princess, it turns out, has a magical artifact that is capable of giving magic back to the world. So Djeli helps her escape, and because that, she is now enemy number one. So her and the Princess Amari are basically set off on this quest to permanently bring magic back to the world. We also follow Amari's brother, who is, again, the king's son, just like Amari's the king's daughter, as he chases them down for her father. And we see his perspective of why magic is bad, why it's dangerous, why he needs to stop Djeli and Amari before they bring magic back. So I really liked this world. I really loved these characters. Oh, there were parts of this book that had me crying. Oh, so sad. Yeah, and I really like the daughter of the Siren Queen I said earlier is younger YA. I feel like, I don't know if this is older YA or if it's just like a more well-developed world, but oh, I love this book and I'm so excited to read the second one, and I can't wait. I found out there's a third one. I thought this was a duology, but I can't wait till the third one comes out. But I love Djeli, I love Amari, I love their very different personalities, but how they both are, you know, strong in their own ways. I like seeing the magic that comes out. I like all the characters we've met. So yeah, I loved this book. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the 3 graphic novels I read this month. First thing I read was volumes 4 and 5 of Monstress. So this is a graphic novel series that follows a high fantasy world. And if there's one thing that people say about Monstress, is that it is confusing. The entire time you don't know what's going on, but it's some of the most beautiful artwork I've ever seen. Basically in this world, there are humans and there are, God, what are they called? They're basically magical beings. They're non-humans. So there are mermaids, there are tiger people, there are wolf people, there are regular looking humans who happen to have magic. And there are also things called old gods. So the old god is pictured here. And we thought that most of the old gods had died off, but in the first volume, our main character is basically infected with one of these old gods. So we kind of follow her journey, as well as the world's journey, as the humans and the non-humans are on the brink of war. So they had a war 10-15 years ago, almost destroyed the world, and they have a very tentative peace right now, but they don't get along. So yeah, again, it's hard to describe, especially because I'm on volumes 4 and 5. But again, the artwork in this book is just gorgeous. I love our main character and her little like found family that she has. Specifically, there's a little like fox boy character that's so, girl, I actually don't know their gender. Fox character that's so cute. I love Kippa. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm sad that I only have 2 more volumes of this, but I absolutely adore this graphic novel series. And then I read the first volume of Once and Future. So this is a graphic novel that follows a young man and his grandmother, and he finds out that his grandmother has been a monster hunter her whole life and never informed him of it. And a woman has basically brought back King Arthur. He is in zombie form, and bringing him back could potentially start the end of the world. So it's basically this naive little, I say little boy, he's definitely an adult man, but he's just like has no idea what's going on, and his sassy grandma, and they are basically out to stop King Arthur and his knights and the woman who summoned them from ending the world. But yeah, it's so fun. I love the grandma. I love these characters. I like the story, like the story elements of how certain names in real life and certain assumptions about the story basically affect how those characters act or stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this version of Arthur didn't have that, so he doesn't know that. But then he's introduced to Excalibur, and all of a sudden he's the version of Arthur that has Excalibur, as opposed to the one before he was where he didn't have it. So, yeah, I really like this series. I'm really excited to continue with it. Yeah, so that was the, what did I say, 15 books? I don't know. At the very beginning, I'm going to have like a little stats thing for it that I read this month. So I think January is a very good reading month. I don't think it'll be this good for a while because I think I always have like a little bit of break in January after the holidays where people kind of just like relaxing and don't want to do things. But I think socially things are going to start picking up again. So we'll see. But yeah, what was your favorite book this January? Did you read any of these ones? Let me know in the comments down below. Have a good day. Bye.